Epcot has had an interesting history, to say the very least. It's seen a large amount of changes over the years, and it's never truly settled on one unifying theme. Right now, it's going through a big transformation, and hopefully it'll come out of it a little more cohesive. But with those changes, it's easy for stuff to slip through the cracks. There are a bunch of extinct attractions that everyone seems to forget about. Case in point, Skyleidoscope. This is one of the most obscure attractions I will ever cover on this channel. Skyleidoscope played at Epcot for only 2 years before it closed for good. I thought I knew the park's history decently enough, but when I first learned about this show, I had never even heard of it. And I could find so little information about it on the internet that I had to dig up old newspaper articles about it. And the more I learned, the more I was shocked that I had never heard of it. And my guess is that the average Disney fan has probably never heard of it either. So what is this show, and how did it fall into such obscurity? That's what we're here to figure out today. So settle in as we explore it together. The story of Skyleidoscope begins with an entirely different attraction. Journey into Imagination opened at Epcot in 1983, located in the then newly christened Imagination Pavilion. If you've only been on the current incarnation of the ride, forget everything you know about it. It used to be completely different. The attraction centered on Dreamfinder, a jolly man who goes around collecting dreams. Throughout the ride, he showed us the wonders of the imagination, along with his faithful student, Figment. It featured many animatronics, illusions, and a new song composed by the Sherman Brothers. Journey into Imagination was a massive hit, and a huge part of that was because of Figment and Dreamfinder. They became iconic characters in their own right, almost becoming mascots for the park. Figment gets the most attention, but Dreamfinder deserves some too. After the attraction opened, you were able to meet them at the Imagination Pavilion. Dreamfinder was his usual self, while Figment was a hand puppet controlled by the actor. The meet and greet was very popular, and further solidified the two as staple Epcot characters. Naturally, when one thing is popular, the first thing someone will think is, how can we milk this for all it's worth? That meant putting the characters into other things. Figment got his own cartoon series and a bunch of merchandise. And they sold like hotcakes, even outselling Mickey plushies for a time. As for Dreamfinder, they had different plans for him. They were going to make him the star of his own show at Epcot. This was kind of unprecedented. And the show would be dubbed Skyleidoscope. The show played on the lagoon that separated Future World and World Showcase. It consisted of planes and kites flying through the air and water vehicles driving on the lagoon. Boats, skis, and all that jazz. One of them was an 85-foot blimp recreation of the Dreammobile from Journey into Imagination, designed by Imagineer Jeffrey Struckman. And it was timed to a soundtrack by Gary Pabin and Steve Scoriggia, with a theme song titled Magic Rainbow. And now that I played it, you'll be in your head all day. You're welcome. I wasn't able to figure out if Chuck McCann returned to voice Dreamfinder, so if anyone knows this for certain, please let me know. The show consisted of 80 performers and cost approximately $1 million to produce, which I imagine was a lot of money to spend on a theme park show back then. Skyleidoscope premiered at Epcot on August 31st, 1985.
Well, they call this Skyleidoscope, and however you spell it, it's out of this world. Would you look at this? It's a battle of good versus evil taking place right here at the World Showcase Lagoon. Those guys up there are the good guys, and they're here to get rid of the bad guys. Those ugly dragons right there in the water. Hey, wait a minute. We got menacing sea dragons, we got planes that dive bomb the bad guys, we got a whole army of boats and rainbow-colored aircraft and hang gliders, too. We got it all right here. How's that for action? Really something, huh? Hey, look out! What's the matter with that guy up there? Was he a wise guy or something? What's going on around here?
And now here comes the part where I have to explain the plot of the show. There isn't a lot of footage of the show available, and what little there is isn't very clear. I can barely hear the dialogue over the airplane jets, and there's a lot of action, so cameras are never able to keep up with it. The few summaries I could find didn't really clear it up either. So it's very likely that I'm missing a lot, don't take this as anything definitive. From what I can gather, Dreamfinder, who I'm pretty sure never actually calls himself that for the entire show, wants to paint the sky with colors. That's what the airplanes were for. They had colored smoke coming out from the back of them. But his plans were thwarted when a bunch of dragons show up to stop him. Why? Because they're evil, I guess. And then a big battle ensues and the good guys win. Also, Dreamfinder apparently has an entire friggin' army at his disposal. So there's a non-zero chance he's a war criminal. Anyways, the show played Saturdays through Wednesdays over the World Showcase Lagoon for 2 years. During the slower seasons, yes, Disney World used to have those, believe it or not, the showings were more sporadic, only happening on select dates. But it seemed like this was a successful show, entertaining guests with spectacle and color. And then, everything changed. On August 2nd, 1987, a plane crashed during a rehearsal of the show. It nosedived in an open field with no other planes involved. The pilot, 27-year-old Rick Harper, was killed in the collision. Upon an investigation by the National Transportation and Safety Board, they believed it was because the wing connector broke while the plane was in the air. This caused the wing to fold back, making the plane fall into a nosedive. When Harper attempted to use a parachute, it caught on the wing. The accident took place in a backstage area about 1.5 miles away from the park. This goes without saying, but the accident was tragic in every sense of the word. In response to the accident, all future Skyleidoscope showings were cancelled, and the show was put on hiatus. And then, it just never came back. Disney never formally announced a closure of the show, and looking at press in the following weeks, it seemed like some were, at least, anticipating its eventual return. But as the months persisted, it became clear that Skyleidoscope had been permanently retired. Eventually, a show would be held at the World Showcase Lagoon, the nighttime spectacular Illuminations. Another water and air show was attempted in 1993, called Surprise in the Sky, but with more kites and fewer airplanes. Epcot would never get a show as large-scale as Skyleidoscope ever again. The story behind Skyleidoscope is a sad one. The bright and colorful theatrics are ultimately overshadowed by the tragedy associated with it. And since it was so short-lived, it fell into obscurity and was never preserved in any meaningful way. There isn't a whole lot more to say. It's just an all-around shame and a dark moment in Epcot's history. But that concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.